is a general discussion about mental health. It is not to be interpreted as specific advice for a specific situation. Every situation is unique and requires advice to be tailored and adapted to that situation. All information in this broadcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional mental health services. If you or a loved one are experiencing mental health distress, please speak to a licensed professional in your area.
It's time to shine that light that lives in you. Living well. It's not too late to change. It's time to be the change. Living well. It's time to shine that light that lives in you. Living well. It's not too late to change. It's time to be the change.
Living well takes a community. So remember to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share with a friend. Welcome to Living Well, where we attend to the mind, the heart, the body, and the soul. We are continuing our series on dating and relationships. And today we are talking about the bedrock of any relationship, which is communication. How are you communicating with your partner? How do you communicate with your partner? Without effective communication, your relationship cannot and will not last. As Bishop says, I'm not a prophet or a son of a prophet, but what I can tell you is that research shows that communication is connected to relationship satisfaction. Are you having difficulty sustaining a relationship? Does it seem like whenever you try to say something or not say something, you get into an argument? We're going to learn today that you're communicating whether you are talking or not. Whether you are talking or whether you are silent, you are communicating. We have a wonderful, amazing guest whose whole work and career life has been dedicated to teaching couples how to increase their communication and have intimacy and desire in their relationship. You don't want to miss this. Whether you are in a relationship now, whether you are getting out of a relationship, or whether you are praying that God delivers you a relationship, today is for you. So just sit back, relax, and get ready to get into communication to continue to help you so that you are living well. All right, now you know what time it is. It is time for the water cooler conversation, where we come out of our office, gather around the water cooler, and discuss something that is hot in the news and social media, or even in our communities today. So we have a wonderful clip for you from Black Love. So let's take a look at what we're talking about today.
It's just now we've been married for 15 plus years, and I've read tons of books. I'm just a lot older now, and there's just easier access to a lot of resources that I'm able to articulate. This is how I'm feeling. This is what, when you say this is how this makes me feel. And not in a, not just out of anger, because that's a lot of times what happens too. You just come across and you start arguing, and it's just anger, and no one's really getting at anything. And anger is not really an emotion. It's just an outward symptom of a real emotion, whether that's loneliness or whatever, disconnection or whatever it is. And you don't know how to articulate, and I think that's what causes the anger. I think that at this point in my life, I'm at a point where I don't want to come across as just angry. I want to be able to effectively articulate my feelings, because that's the pathway to a healthy, sustainable relationship, which ultimately, I love my husband. I don't want to be divorced. And I tell my mom, actually like a month ago, I was like, I use you and Dad as a cautionary tale. And I love my parents, I do, but I don't want to end up where they are. So I purposely take inventory. How am I feeling? What's going on? Put those into words, tell your husband.
Communication in relationships.
Key.
Big topic, hot topic. I would say for people who are contacting me for therapy in couples relationships, probably about 98% of them say communication.
I would agree. They do. They say communication, and then when you engage in conversation and you realize that it's so much more under there. It's so much more than communication. But communication is a huge piece of, how they they interact and get along.
Exactly, because if you think about it, for most of those underlying issues that you just mentioned, if they were able to share that with their partner in effective communication, which means not only do I share, but you are in a posture to receive and to hear what I'm saying, right, without defensiveness. If we were able to do that, we could work on some of those underlying
Right.
issues.
So what you're saying is communication is not just me telling you off and getting my point across to you. I have to also be open to hearing your perspective.
That's right. We need a hearer and a sender, right? A talker. We need both of those for there to be, effective communication. And I really applaud her for saying that she's done the work over these 15 years to really, I love that word, purpose, right? Meaning she did it intentionally to say, I don't want this negative outcome, quote unquote, divorce.
Right.
I want to learn how to be able to share with you what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, and to give that to you in a way that it doesn't build up and fester. So I really applaud her for doing the work. I mean, and it's hard work.
It is. And I especially appreciate her being able to recognize that how she learned how to communicate is not what she wanted to bring into her marriage. She talked about loving her parents, but using them as a cautionary tale. I love mom and daddy, but what they had and where they are, that's not what I want. And the fact that she could acknowledge that and then, like you said, purposefully engage in the work to make sure she have a different outcome. That's the maturity. That's the growth.
Exactly. And this was a snippet from an episode of Black Love, the television show on OWN. And so we didn't get a chance to hear from his perspective and his response. So I would have loved to have heard, because he has to be open to receiving what she's saying for her to even build that muscle, because it is building a muscle. I mean, if you haven't learned or hadn't learned how to communicate effectively and to open your heart in that way, then when you share it for the first time with your spouse or your boyfriend or whoever you're dating or your partner, when you share it for the first time, it's kind of like an act of faith.
Yes.
And you wait, okay, how are they going to receive it? Are they going to become defensive? Is it going to turn into an argument? And that teaches you or kind of reinforces whether you do have a relationship where you can share your heart or whether it's dangerous to. And that's going to dictate how that communication continues to kind of be in your relationship, how you continue. So he had to create a space where he's able to look at her and say, I hear you, and let's work on it. For her to say, now this is something that I purposefully do and I regularly do.
Absolutely. And let's not forget, she said after 15 years. So, something tells me that maybe they didn't have all the tools and the resources that were needed. Maybe she didn't know how to do the work that was required. So I can imagine they had a few bumps and bruises in the middle. But
as we all do.
Exactly, that's the point. Like, this thing doesn't happen overnight. And so when we have our couples, when they come in, we've been married since breakfast and we're having communication issues. Well, you know what? We have to learn how to do this, and we have to learn how to communicate, learn what communication is and what it's not.
Right.
And I think that that's one of the most encouraging pieces as well. It's work. We are all a work in progress, and get you some tools and some resources.
Get you some tools, and they're out there. There are books out there. There are websites out there. One that I love to quote, or a couple who are psychologists that I love to quote, is John Gottman and Julie Gottman.
Yes.
I mean, there's some simple steps. Like, one of their primary steps to helping couples communicate is a soft startup. Soft start. How easy is that? If you have a request, something that you desire, just the way that you kind of bring that up to your partner can dictate how the rest of it goes. I mean, are you going to say, look at this trash. Look at the trash. You can see it stinks. Why you didn't just get up and take the trash out? Get up, go on, get off that TV and take the trash out. What do you think you're going to get from that? You think your partner going to be like, oh, yes, babe, I'm sorry.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
So a softened startup may be something like, sweetheart, do you think you'll have time to take the trash out today? It's really getting full. I need your help. Could you help me and take out the trash, and I'll do X, or I'm really tired. Could you take the trash? That's a softened startup. Just the bid. Not, you'll never hug me no more. When you gonna hug me? Come over here and sit by. Versus, I miss you.
Right.
I miss you.
So what you're saying, Dr. Holmes, is one of the things I used to hear my mother say all the time when I was younger. She said, it ain't what you say, it's how you say it.
Come on now.
So, I think there's a lesson in that just in basic communication 101. Even if it's something, that we're asking for or making a point, how you speak to your partner makes a world of difference. What Granny used to say, we get more bees with honey.
Yes, right. Than vinegar.
We get more bees with honey than vinegar.
Right,
yes.
exactly.
So I'll start up, like you said, thinking about the tone and how you are saying what you're saying and how you're formulating your words too.
And it also comes back to the ways that you were communicated to.
Yeah.
Right, throughout, and what you've learned is a normal communication style, right? So there's some people who they think normal communication is yelling and cussing their partner out, and it's like, oh, but I just want to tell you how I feel, so I can cuss you out, or I can say these things, and that's normal communication for them. And it might be their normal or baseline, but it doesn't mean that it's healthy.
Not at all.
It does not mean that it's healthy. One thing that I would often say is, you can't kiss me and curse me with the same mouth.
Absolutely.
You can't kiss me and curse me with the same mouth, because those words that you said to condemn me or to curse me, those still linger. And you turn around and say, I'm sorry and I love you. Like, that doesn't go away.
Right.
So even the ways that we learn to communicate and what is normal in communication can bleed over. But like you said, his wife said, I realized that that's not what I wanted to be.
That's right.
And she made a choice. So we have to remember that if that was what you experienced, it does not mean that that's what you have to repeat.
Exactly.
It means that you're vulnerable to repeating it. So you have to just take extra steps to do something different or to be something different.
Absolutely. And to take that a step further, that may have been what I was used to because that's how I was raised. But what about you? You may have been raised in a completely different environment. Right. And so now what I'm bringing into this relationship could really, really be harmful to you. And I shouldn't expect you to accept what's normal for me as normal for you. Dysfunction breeds more dysfunction, and we don't have to continue to operate it.
We don't have to continue to operate that, and there are people who talk about this all day, every day. So I think water cooler conversation needs to stop.
Bring in the expert.
We need to bring in our experts. So coming right up is our expert who facilitates couples all over the world learning how to develop intimacy and connection in their relationship. So stay tuned. We have Dr. Jeshana Johnson coming right at you. And we are back with our wonderful guest today, Dr. Jeshana Johnson, founder of the Intimacy Seminars and licensed clinical psychologist extraordinaire. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. I have kind of watched you over your career, watched you grow, and all the wonderful things that you are doing. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I could think of no one else better to have during this series as we talk about dating and relationships. I was like, we have to have Dr. Jeshana on here. We got to have her here. And your many specialties. I know you talk a lot about intimacy in relationships and helping couples to kind of fulfill themselves in that area and the various areas of intimacy. But I really want to kind of talk about with you today communication. I think that's where we should start. So talk to us a little bit about how you define communication, what it is and what it isn't, and like some of the misconceptions that people have when they say, oh, we need to work on communication.
I'll be honest. When you posed that question to me, it made me realize that in all the work that I do with individuals and couples, I never asked them that question. And so in trying to really define exactly what communication was, I was like, okay. But I think I can answer.
Okay.
Communication is verbal and it is nonverbal. When we're talking about verbal, we're talking about being able to share our innermost parts of who we are, what we want, what we need, what we desire, asking for emotional support. In a nonverbal perspective, it is the tone, right? The tone in which we communicate brings meaning to what we're saying. It is the body language, and body language is about the highest percentage of nonverbal communication, right? Are you open to hear? And your body's gonna say that. Are you closed to what is being said? And then there's eye contact. Eye contact is also a part of nonverbal communication. Are you making eye contact with the person who is saying something and communicating that you want to hear what they have to say, or are you looking away? You don't want to have to hear what they're having to say. So it's both verbal and nonverbal. But in short, communication is allowing yourself to be known.
Oh, that's deep.
Really?
I need to get that on a t-shirt. Allow yourself to be known. I like it.
Allowing yourself to be known. But the second part of your question was some of the misconceptions. I think what happens is a lot of times people think that good communication is as long as we are agreeing. And when couples or individuals come in and they're talking about we're not having good communication, often what they're saying is we don't agree on this. What communication is not is expecting someone outside of yourself to know what it is that you need or want or expect or desire, right? And what happens is, as a result, is what I call an infantile wish, right? You want your partner to just know what you want or what you desire. And
so that's kind of like when infants,
I'm about to tell you, I'm about to break it all down, right? Because I know the audience that we're talking to needs to be able to understand this, is that this infantile wish is, when you want your partner to be so in tune with you that they can anticipate some of the things that you need, right? And it's like being a new mom or a new dad to an infant and you're not really sure what they want. So this anxiety around what is it that you need? Do you need to be changed? Do you need to be fed? Do you need to be held? And if you think about that in a relationship, the anxiety that might come from having to anticipate your partner's needs, wants, and desires, you can imagine that that is something that gets really in the way of our communication. So what happens is you end up getting less of what you want, which is a partner, and getting more of a parent.
That's deep.
I don't want to be married to my parents.
Right, we don't.
At all. And I'm even thinking about how that leads to a lot of conflict and also feelings of being let down and disappointed, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because you're like, you should just know that I come home from a day at work, a hard day. You should have just known my day was hard and had my bath waiting for me. Or, you should just know that, it's the anniversary of me, getting my toenails clipped, and so I should get some flowers. Like,
and as ridiculous as that sounds, I could tell you that this is what I hear on a daily basis, that you should just know how to love me. And my question to that partner is always, in what world would they have learned that?
Right.
How to love you.
Right. But I think because people think that showing the ways that you show love and you desire to be loved are universal. And
there's not.
Like how I want someone to love me and to care for me and to show me is completely different, can be completely different from, what you would want from your husband or what you would want from your husband. But so many times we put that pressure on our partner, like, well, you should just know, versus I need to help you to understand who I am,
Right.
what I desire.
We want them to read our minds.
Right.
That's what we, if you love me so, then you should already know. And for some reason, there's this idea that if you don't know, then, you must not love me the way that I think you should, or the way I need you to, but I'm not really conveying that to you.
Right. And so then you find partners being kind of like frustrated, right, and or shutting down around that, when you can simply open your mouth.
And so when you say opening your mouth and being able to speak, is that what you're finding that actually gets in the way? Like, what is it that these couples, what what causes them to really struggle with this communication piece? You know, is it just that they can't open up their mouth and say? Because I know that there are a lot of couples, you know, the couples that we work with, this idea of being able to convey to you what I need, well, I don't know how to do that, you know, or some may not have the wording, or some don't even necessarily know what they need. I don't know. So what is it that you see? What are some of the things that gets in the way of these couples being able to communicate?
And so that's an interesting question, because I don't know that things get in the way of us being able to communicate, because I am of the belief that we are always communicating. Even when we're not saying something, we're communicating. Have you ever sat next to someone and you know they're upset with you, and when you ask them what's wrong, it's nothing. Right? But you can feel it. So communication is also energy that you can feel. And so when they're sitting next to you and they're indicating that they're mad, but their verbal is not congruent with what you're experiencing, I don't think that we can not communicate. We're always communicating. Now, what gets in the way of effective communication is the concept of what I believe is called differentiation. A lot of times when we get in relationships, in the beginning of the relationship, what we call the symbiotic stage, right, or the honeymoon phase of the relationship, we almost have like this umbilical cord that is attached, right? And you're feeding off of me and I'm feeding off of you, and it's great, right? I'm saying all of the things that are similar. We highlight similarities and we really diminish our differences. But that can only last for so long. After I've said all that I can say that you're gonna validate and we are similar on, and it can be as simple as, you know, ice cream that we think we're a match made in heaven. It's like, oh, you like mint and chip too? Oh my gosh, this is fate. You know, we're a match made in heaven. And so we highlight these similarities, and then when we are in a longer term relationship, what hits us is differentiation. Being able to understand that we are different people and that our partners are different. And that's what gets in the way. And so it's masked through communication. It's masked through sexual discrepancies and desire. It's masked through financial pieces. It's masked in all of that. But the core of it is you becoming a different person and growing into yourself while allowing your partner to do the same. I believe that when God said, and the two shall become one, he was talking about sex, people, sex, not, you know, not losing your individuality, but using your individuality to grow. Our partners are supposed to be mirrors for ourselves, right? In the areas of it and growing. And so if you understand that growth has growing pains, then you understand relationships is about growing. And so it's not about that we can't communicate. It's usually we can't stand the message, and it's the part that doesn't necessarily feel similar anymore.
Yeah, I can see that. And I see individuals often interpret the fact that we're different as we're incompatible. Right?
Yeah.
That we don't belong together. It's like, oh, if you think that, you know, mint and chip is great, and I'm like, but I discovered pralines and cream. Right. Like, oh no. Right. Oh no. We're doomed. We're doomed, right? You want the red car, but I think white cars are amazing and are safer. Then it's like we can't agree on anything.
Yeah.
And it becomes, well, you know, we've just grown apart.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I hear all the time. And I'm sure in the work that you've done with couples as well and individuals, one of the complaints is that we've grown apart. Is it that you've grown apart or and some people do, right? So I'm not going to dismiss that. But then there's also the question of, have you grown up?
Right.
And that's a difference. I think for the most part, we think we want to date and marry ourselves, but that gets boring. And I remember my apostle said, if the both of you think and act and feel the same all the time, one of you is unnecessary.
Now that goes on a t-shirt.
Exactly. That's the word. Say that again. That's the word. I got to say that again. Say it slow so I can get that.
For the people in the back.
If both of you think and feel and act the same, then one of you is unnecessary.
Because we don't need to.
No, we don't. We
We
don't.
don't need to.
I couldn't take two of me. I couldn't take two of me. I got to be honest. Two of me, that's a lot.
One is enough.
But that's honesty and maturity.
Yeah,
a lot of people don't necessarily have that honesty and mature aspect of their relationship. They really think that they want somebody who thinks like them and feels like them, and that's
That is such an important concept. That message is so huge because we often see it in the couples that we work with when they think about growing apart. When mature couples understand our differences are okay and we can appreciate the differences in one another, and it's okay for you to like pralines and cream. No, it's okay for you to like mint chip. I like pralines and cream. It's okay.
I love mint and chip.
And we grow to a point where we say it's okay and we can still do this together. We need to be able to appreciate the differences in one another because we also understand in relationships that our mate will show us who we are.
Absolutely. And I think that is probably the issue.
The problem, right?
Is that sometimes our mate kind of sees us more clearly than we see ourselves.
Absolutely.
And I also think it's important at this point to kind of differentiate, but to really say the difference between us, like differentiating, finding our individuality and not being the same or similar, that we're talking about those things that are not necessarily connected to values, because I think
Correct.
that's where
true.
you get into trouble.
Yes.
Like it's very
Absolutely.
difficult to say I value family and I love family, and my mate is like, I don't never want to see family. And I
Right.
don't need,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
those
That's a
things
problem.
that are value, those things that we hold most true. Like I really love God and I have a heart for God, and the person I'm trying to date is
Yeah.
worshiping Satan. That really can't coexist.
Absolutely. And when I'm talking about differentiation, I'm talking about the first core part of that is a solid sense of self that is flexible and can grow. But that is what you hold dear to you, your core values and your beliefs, right? Not necessarily the negotiable list of things, but the things that you cannot negotiate that comes at your core, right? In those ways, most people get with another partner that is very similar to them. When we're talking about differences, we might be talking about you're an introvert, I'm an extrovert, right? You're the social butterfly, you're the quiet one, and things like that. But for the most part, our values do have to be very similar. Otherwise, we are going to find a lot of different conflicts coming up around that.
Now, I'm interested to know, because I know, again, you're the founder of the intimacy seminars, and we'll talk about that a little when we leave, because we like to leave people with tools and tips. But I wanted to have you talk a little bit about intimacy and how intimacy relates to communication. And I'm quite sure that you would say intimacy is related to differentiation as well. So
Absolutely.
How do all of those kind of tie together?
So not only is differentiation related to intimacy, is directly related to communication, all of that, because if you know who you are, when you can communicate and you can also allow your partner to influence you without feeling like you're going to lose your identity, right? So if intimacy is into me, you see, right, then I can communicate with you and I can accept influence from you without feeling like I'm going to lose myself. What happens is after this symbiotic stage, this honeymoon phase, and we begin to find out we are a different person and our partner is really a different person too, intimacy starts here in the mind, right? So how you feel about yourself, how you feel about your partner is extremely important. And if I'm having difficulties with my partner and how I feel about them and even about myself, how does that impact my communication? How does that impact my ability to be intimate, being vulnerable, and having the courage to share who I am? Again, being known and allowing myself to be seen. You have to know who you are to do that. Otherwise, what we call like this reflective sense of self, where we get who we are from our partner, when they stop validating us, then we're lost, right? And then we don't allow our partners to change, because if you change, you may see me different and you may reflect to me what is different. So intimacy is really wrapped around being able to know yourself and letting that be seen.
And some people, I think that's amazing. And I'm just thinking, like, some people will think, oh, intimacy is just about sex. But we know that there are more types of intimacy than just sexual intimacy. Can you speak to that a little bit?
And I'm glad that you said that, because I think we have more couples that are having sex that is not intimate than we are having sex that is intimate, because it is easier to kind of take off your clothes than to take off this that's clothing our mind and our hearts. So intimacy is spiritual. There's spiritual intimacy. The statistics and the research shows that those who pray together and meditate and affirm one another have more satisfying relationships. So you have to ask yourself about spiritual intimacy. How are you communicating and spiritually building your partner? Then there's emotional intimacy, right? How can I share my heart with you, right? Sometimes people share their bodies more than they share their hearts. And so, yes, sex is not always intimate, but if you can share your heart, and I do believe if you're sharing your body, you probably should be sharing your heart. But then there's also intellectual intimacy, right? Challenging each other on the different things that we believe, playing games, having debates, right? It doesn't have to be an argument, but there can be passionate conversations about, and that's where difference comes in. You said, it's okay to be, it's necessary to be different to bring quality to the relationship. There is spiritual intimacy, physical intimacy, and physical intimacy is not always sex, right? Physical intimacy is the affection, the being able to hold hands, right? Touch is very necessary. There's skin hunger that happens when you haven't been touched, and research shows how detrimental that is.
I also think, one that I think of too is also recreational or experimental intimacy.
Social intimacy.
Exactly. So there are so many different types and levels of intimacy, and all of them, if you're not able to be intimate with your partner, which, as you said, intimate, you see, sharing that innermost part, if you're not open to that, then communication is always going to falter.
Right.
No.
Right?
Because one of the things you have to do is that after you've said everything that is similar and is going to be validated, you have to decide what you're going to say next. And that comes with, do I risk both closer connection by sharing more of me, or do I risk separating and losing the relationship because is it what I share that you don't like, or you want something different? Right. And so if you fear sharing that in your communication, you'll only share the parts that's going to be validated or similar to your partner. And then eventually, is your authentic self really showing up to the relationship, or only pieces of it?
And you're going to be, if it's not showing up to the relationship, you're going to feel unfulfilled. Yeah. You're going to feel alone. Resentment, right. Sure, you're going to feel unseen. Yes. And then, which opens the door for you to be seen by someone else. But that's a whole, that's a whole nother episode. That's another episode. Right. Well, we don't want to hold you all day. I'm quite sure you're very, very busy. I just wanted to know if there are any kind of a couple of tips that you can give folks to help them to kind of improve their relationship and communication.
Well, first of all, I'll say this. I know your book, Dating with Purpose, right? I know your book, Dating with Purpose, is for those who are looking to to start dating or dating, but I did the workbook just as a married person. I'll be married next week, 28 years, right?
Wow.
And so
Wait, stop there. 28 years, girl, you look 32. Were you fooling me?
I am. But, you know, one of the things your book talks about, and one of the things that I talk about a lot of times with my couples, is really having a solid sense of self. Yes. You have to know who you are, and you have to be willing to grow. Right? The other thing is what we call emotional intelligence, right? Being aware of your emotions, right? Being able to convey them congruently. You can't be like, I said I ain't mad, right?
Ain't nothing wrong.
Right? And the awareness of an other. So when there's an awareness of an other and you are curious as to what is going on for them, like, so tell me what this really means for you, that's important, right? Or do you go into this discussion that I'm just going to get my point across because my point is important, versus saying, what exactly does this mean to you? How important is this to you? Where is this non-negotiable for you? I think being aware of the other is also very important. And then being able to regulate your emotions. When you can regulate your emotions instead of escalating, then the likelihood of you moving through a conversation is super important. And then when it does escalate, how do you move the conversation forward? So these are things that you have to ask yourself. Only 2 things can improve a relationship. You change or your partner change. And the only one that you have control over is you changing.
Right. In a nutshell.
Oh my goodness, Dr. Jeshana, this has been an amazing conversation. I really appreciate it. I always love having you around. Tell the folks where they can find you.
You can find me at The Intimacy Seminars, that's with an S.com. I'm on Twitter, got_intimacy, as well as on all other social media platforms, The Intimacy Seminars.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing. Well, I hope that you have been truly blessed by understanding communication and your role in it. So until next time, we pray that you are living well. For more information and resources, be sure to check us out at normalizehelp.org. And you can always email us at livingwell@faithfamily.org to get a question answered or to tell us a story. You never know, your question might make it to air or be the subject of one of our episodes. See you next week.
It's not too late to change, it's time to be the change. It's time to shine that light that lives in you. It's not too late to change, now it's time to change. Now it's time to change, now it's time to change. Now it's time to change, time to change, time to change.